Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we have got another UK build. I am building a set of terraces. You may have seen my previous video where I built some 1960s terraces, and we're doing something very different today, as these are the classic British terraced houses, the kind of thing you see all over the country, and they are very distinctive for opening up right onto the street. So as you can see here, you've got your front door and bam, you're literally on the road, on the pavement, but this is very typical of this style. And what else can I say about this style of house? So they're I would say they're quite small, definitely by international standards, but a lot of people, living in these, this would be quite a good size house for a small family or a couple. In the UK we have very, very small houses compared to other parts of the world. So, I think a lot of people looking at these houses just can't believe how small they are when they see them in real life, or, the fact that they're all built side by side. I know in many parts of the world, the idea of even sharing a wall with your neighbour is seen as quite crazy, but that's how we do it here in the UK. And I think we like it. I definitely do, and I've lived in many houses that look a bit like this or some variation of this, and you just get on with it. Really, it's not that unusual to us to have neighbours on either side, and yes, there is sometimes a bit of noise, but that's just you just kind of get on with it, I suppose, don't you? It's not something we really overthink too much. But as well as having the slight drawbacks of being pretty much on top of each other, and sometimes there's noise or whatever, there is actually, in this kind of street, I think, a real sense of community. Especially historically, people would really take pride in their little street, their little terrace, and living this closely to people. You're obviously gonna get to know them, get to know their family, probably get to know about their business, because you can probably hear bits and bobs and see who's coming and going. So it's quite it's probably quite hard to have any secrets if you live in a house like this. You're definitely gonna need to be on good terms with your neighbours, because any sort of secret activities, I don't think there's any possibility really to keep it under wraps, or at least not for very long. So yeah, as you can see, we're working on the floor plans now, and pretty much I think they would have called these 2 up, 2 down. I think that's where that phrase comes from. You hear terraced houses being described as 2 up, 2 down sometimes, and I think it's basically this. You've got what is essentially 2 rooms downstairs and 2 bedrooms upstairs. So if these were real life, it might even be that this little kitchen area, the staircase and the living room were all split up separately. And I think, you do see that kind of layout in a lot of these old houses, where there's just a really narrow hallway and then a small room. But for the sake of the Sims, I've opened up the downstairs into sort of one open space, because it just gets quite pokey with all the archways and doors and whatever, and I think it would just make it too difficult for the Sims to move around. And I think, to be honest, a lot of these houses now, if you've modernised them, they would probably have knocked down some walls. So I said modernising them. You're probably looking at this thinking, this does not look modern at all, and it's really not. There's a real range here in the interiors as to how I've done these. Some probably have the style they had when they were first built, so really throwing it back to I want to say 1910, 1920 up to 1930, so coming up 100 years old. Whereas other ones I've decorated in a slightly more contemporary way, and by that I mean maybe going as modern as 2000 at a push. So none of these are really kitted out in 2025 style. You're not going to see any drones on the table or prime energy drink or whatever, I don't know, but it's going to be pretty much 20th century is the vibe, spanning the whole century more or less. And this first one you can see here, it's very red. Spoiler alert, there is a much more red house to come. I don't know what came over me, but it really clearly was a vibe on this day. So I've kind of gone with different themes throughout different buildings and tried to tie in all the decoration, make it feel quite true to form. So you're getting a lot of this classic lino on the floor and jazzy wallpapers and loud carpets. And on these 4 houses you're seeing me build now, these 4 units on the left-hand side of the lot, I've included fireplaces as well. I didn't actually do that on the other side, but we'll get onto that later. So yeah, as you can see, pretty compact, pretty not loads of room, but as I say in all of these videos that I've done, I much prefer to build in these smaller, more compact lots, because I just feel like A, it makes it look a lot more lived in and full of life, and B, actually, when you play in a lot and it's just got loads of open rooms or loads of unused space, you just end up taking hours for your sim to get anywhere, and in reality it's just annoying. You know, it takes them 45 minutes to get to the school bus, whatever, it's too much. So nobody's missing the school bus in these houses. Very easy to get around the house. You could literally just speak probably at a normal speaking volume and everybody in the house could be able to join the conversation. But yeah, so this is the second unit on the left hand side of the lot, just working on the little bathroom. And because the shape of these rooms was so small, there's basically sort of 2 bathrooms in each house, but the downstairs one has a toilet and the upstairs one has a shower. So between the 2 of them, you sort of have 1 bathroom per terraced house. So, you know, your Sims will definitely be getting their steps in living here. They'll be up and downstairs if they need the loo in the night, but this is the reality of living in these sort of small houses. You know, they weren't built to be super luxurious. They were quite practical. You probably would have seen these built for a lot of the time, actually. You will find houses like this in, especially the north of England, in a industrial town or a post-industrial town, where there would have been a large factory or mill or something like that, a large industry, and then the owner of the factory, or, you know, the businessman or whoever it is, would build rows and rows of terraced houses next to the factory, and that would be where all the workers live. So it's quite amazing, actually. You visit these places, and obviously a lot of the time now, well, I think all of the time for the most part, they've shut down the factory or whatever it may be, but you're still left with these beautiful rows of terraces, and often they've really been loved and well preserved. Because ask anyone in the UK, no matter how fancy they are, no matter how much money they have or whatever, you can be in a house like this and it can just be really lovely. So despite it being, you know, it's small, it's not humongous, these houses, when they're taken care of, are really great homes for people. And like I said, would you want to have like 6 children living here? No, but it would be great for a couple, or maybe 1 or 2 children, depending on how much personal space you guys need. But yeah, that's the kind of, you get all kinds of families living in these types of houses. It's so many different kind of styles of family and makeup of family, and I've tried to reflect that a little bit in the build here, with different personality on each of the lots. Some of them, I mean, it's more evident when you get to the bedrooms, but some of them really are for, you can tell it's more for like a couple, and they've got a spare bedroom or like a bit of a hobby room, and other ones you've got 1 primary bedroom and then like 2 children's beds in the second bedroom. So you can imagine how different those 2 houses would be. You know, one would be relatively chilled, like quite a lot of room, 2 people living here, you know, that's not too bad. But then if you throw 2 children or a teenager into the mix, maybe it starts to get a little bit chaotic, probably. So yeah, going through, I think, what have I done now? Yeah, so I'm onto the other side now. And like I said, in these ones, I decided not to add the chimney, and I did love the feature of the chimney in the other side, but it was actually taking up, I mean, it was only 1 tile, but it was right in the middle of the room, so it kind of dictated the kind of the shape. You couldn't really have a TV slap bang in the middle, for example, with furniture around it. It sort of had to factor in the fire, which, you know, it just, I think it worked on that side. It made for the more kind of small, pokey space feeling, which was quite nice. But you can see even now, these feel so much more spacious just for having removed that 1 fireplace. And this is one of the ones that's slightly more modern. You know, it's a bit less chaotic. It feels a little bit more up to date. Maybe this is sort of, I don't know, what would you say? What era would you say this harks back to? Kind of maybe 2000s, maybe late 90s. It kind of has a bit of that vibe to me. But yeah, like I say, just so much more room somehow, just from taking out that one fireplace. And also, when I realised these windows, when I realised they had these slots on them for putting clutter and decoration, I was just, I think I'd go back and add some to every single one, because obviously that's a great opportunity to, add a little bit of personality into each room. And I probably don't usually do as much clutter as I have done in these houses, but because they're so small and because they're so old, the style is so old, these houses by now are so lived in. Like, if you visit a house like this and somebody's lived there for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever, even more sometimes, there's little bits of them and their personality all over the house. And I think those ones where it looks a little bit older, it makes sense for there to be shelves and shelves and shelves of just all their belongings and random things. So that's kind of what I went with. But as you can see, this side of the terrace is a bit less cluttered because of, we've lost that fireplace. And as you can see, we've got a kitchen island here. That would never have dreamed of that on the other side. It would have just not worked. But some more like stylized choices on this side as well. You'd probably call this a little bit more like jazzy, because the other side, it's kind of very traditional furniture, comfy sofas, armchairs, around the fireplace, bookshelves, shelves, whereas this is clearly somebody who quite likes the colour yellow and black, and they've gone for sort of, I don't know what you'd even call this, to be honest, but, something a little bit jazzy and funky. But that lips sofa, I was 50-50 as to whether to use that, and because I wasn't sure, even though that room, the yellow room we were just building, was quite funky, it didn't really feel like the sort of beige lip sofa or the brown lip sofa suited it. But then, who should come along next other than this pink and red moment that we're having next door? I think this is the 7th house or 7th like ground floor I've built at this point, so clearly I was just getting a little bit I don't know what was going on in my brain at this point. Obviously I think I was just getting a little bit experimental, let's say, because there's only so many times you can build similar things over and over, and it gets to a point, So here we go, we swap the lip sofa in the yellow house, and obviously it's much more at home here in the pink house, with these funky little egg chairs as well. And you know what, why not have a little red house like this? And again, like, I don't know if I'm just making this up, but houses like this, because they're so old and they've been there 100 years, they are literally, the saying goes, it's as safe as houses, and they really are indestructible. But they're not indestructible, obviously, but they're very, very sturdy, and they're well built, actually. What was my point here? So in terms of them having personality, so people move in, and because they've probably had, I don't know, like 5-6 households living there before, people really move in and put their stamp on houses like this. So I don't think it is too unusual to see really out there personalized decoration in these styles of houses, because people buy a house like this, they want to make it their own. For example, imagine you bought this house here that we're doing now. This may not be your style, this sort of 60-year-old vibe. So you're going to move in, and if you are the kind of person that likes pink and red, then why wouldn't you make everything pink and red? That was my logic. Anyway, this one is going back to the old style a little bit more. This is maybe like 60s, 70s in its decor, with a few modern things thrown in. It isn't meant to be building it as if it's that era, but I don't know, it's just nice to sort of reference the different styles when you're doing this kind of thing, I think. So just working through some more finishing touches now on the last ground floor, and still going with this kind of farmhouse vibe, very old-fashioned, but works really well in that space, I think, and doing some different landscaping in the gardens, because they would have different levels of care that they take for the garden. You know, some people might really take pride in this little backyard they have, whereas, as you'll see, other ones just, they're a bit more overgrown, or I think a couple end up with like an old sofa abandoned out there, which again is what you'd find, isn't it, in a row like this, which is full of very different people with very different lives. And you know, it wouldn't all be uniform as you would find in like a new build, for example, or on a really expensive street that all the houses have been completely modernised, or they're all worth £1 million now, which actually, this is the way it is in the UK now, which is crazy. Depending on what part of the country you're in, you'll find houses like this, which are still very, very much for working people and, you know, just normal kind of starter homes. But if you're in London, or if you're in the southeast, little homes like this are still gonna cost like over £500,000 or more, depending on how modernised they are. So yeah, it's quite hopeless actually. Like I was saying before, these houses, this style would have been built often by an employer for the workers of like a factory, for example, and we've got to a point now where you can't even afford a house like this unless there's two of you earning almost £100,000 each, which is not an exaggeration. It's actually crazy. But I know that is the case in a lot of big cities nowadays. So yeah, it's quite hopeless. So luckily the Sims don't have to deal with that. They'll just be able to move in and rent these, because they will be zoned as apartments. So the good thing about that is when you move your Sim in, they can pick a house, and then all the other houses will get populated with like NPCs basically, which just makes the whole place feel a lot more alive, rather than just having your Sim on like an empty lot, which in my opinion at least can just get a bit dull, especially in The Sims 2, where you have to, you know, go through loading screens every time you want to go to a community lot or whatever. For me personally, I end up just literally like consigning the Sims to the home for their entire lives. They never see a park, they never see a shop. I'm just not able to brave the loading screens. So even though you should, and sometimes I obviously do, but it gets to a point where it's just too annoying to load in and out of the house. So yeah, they end up just staying there. But the good thing is, in an apartment building or like an apartment street like this, there'll be other people moving around, and later on we build a little communal area out the back at the side of the houses. So you know, there's going to be lots of barbecues and things. So it gives them something else to do. They can actually leave the house and do something, and not just stare at the mailbox, which, you know, it's a good thing. But here we are working on the bedrooms now, and similar to downstairs in these houses, really, they vary in style, from being fairly modern, quite old school. I think there's one that has really grotty vibes, and I pictured some guy living there who's, I don't know, some creepy guy that lives on the street, you know. I feel like that's such a classic thing on a street like this. There's always a creepy guy. So obviously representation matters, so creepy guy gets featured in this terrace. So if you have a creepy Sim, that might just be the house for him. And I'll talk about that more when we get onto it, and the choices I made to make his house weird. But this is, you know, it gets to a point with these houses, they're very, obviously it's the same floor plan over and over and over, so you kind of are more likely to, I think, to add different bits of personality, because otherwise, you know, I could have just copied and pasted each room, but you know, what's the point? This is the creepy room. Okay, so, you know, it's not that creepy, but it's just, you know, it's a bit dirtier, messier, and I've gone for those grungy colours, and he's stolen a street sign on his walk home, and it's rammed down the side of his bed, and his bookshelves made of, like, breeze blocks. So, yeah, that whole just sort of less pride in his home, probably, than some of the other ones. But next door, similar vibe, but a bit nicer. When I saw this bed, it really reminded me of my grandma, may she rest in peace. Like, is this a universal thing? Did anybody else's grandma have, like, a strangely regal bed? I don't know what that was about. And I used this dirty bathroom tile, which I never thought I would ever use in my life, but I finally found a place to use it. So, for the first time ever, first time for everything, that disgusting bathroom tile has made it into one of my builds. So that is good. Always good to try new things. And I think that's what's been really good about doing these videos on my channel, is just trying different things. Because when I'm building things in The Sims, I just can, obviously I enjoy it, but then it gets to a point where you can sort of think, oh, whatever, I'll just put in some random bed and just call it a day. But because I'm doing these videos, it's kind of making me focus on really trying to do different things in each room and build something that's interesting to, interesting for me to build and also interesting to watch. So I think it's been quite good. It's pushing me to do different things. So if you haven't seen the other videos, please do go check them out. I really appreciate everyone who's viewed the videos and left a comment. I've had really nice comments so far, so thank you everyone who has taken the time to, say what they liked about the build, or let me know their thoughts. I really do appreciate that. And of course, anybody who then goes on to like the video or subscribe, again, it's really, really appreciated. And it's really giving me a boost to keep doing these videos, so much appreciated. And yeah, but here we are now building, I think it's the last one on, oh no, we've moved on to the other side now. You saw there that quite cute kids' bedroom. So like I said before, we've got some rooms that have, for example, just one kid's bed in them or two kids' beds in them. So you could imagine, as is in real life, different sized families have to make this space work for them. And whereas this one here is a bit more, it's a bit more stylized, and it looks like there's two double bedrooms. So this might be kind of two friends sharing or two professionals, who knows. But compared to the other one that has multiple kids' beds and then like a parent's bedroom, obviously the way that house, the vibe of that house, the way it operates is going to be very, very different. So yeah, just making sure there's a good amount of variety, and also it impacts what these will actually end up costing. So when it comes to rent, I can't remember exactly what it was, but there's quite a range, because they've obviously got varying levels of expensive furniture in them. Some of them are quite cheap and other ones have more expensive objects, so you end up with quite a good range. So whatever kind of life or story you're trying to play for your sim, there's probably a house here that's gonna match what story you've got in mind. Or if not, you can always come in and just completely redecorate one, and the rest of them will stay the same. So yeah, and I will make sure to figure out a way to upload these builds. I've had a couple of comments saying they'd like to download these. I'm still not really sure the best way to do that. It's a bit lazy of me, but uploading them to Mod The Sims, somebody suggested, but I think to do that I have to go and take hundreds of screenshots, and I think it's sort of like a slightly more demanding process to get them uploaded to Mod The Sims. And I did, this was years ago, but try and upload a build to Mod The Sims, and they actually rejected it, and I was like, oh wow. So I've got a bit of a grudge against Mod The Sims, but I can swallow that and try and upload these again to either Mod The Sims or whatever's good. So if anyone has any good sites that make sense to upload these kind of like Sims houses to, do drop a comment and let me know. And I'm happy to upload them, because I think it could be really fun actually to see people, actually downloading these and using them in their games. I actually had one of my best friends from childhood is also very into The Sims 2, and when we were, we must have been about 10 or 11, we would have sleepovers and literally set our alarm clock for 6 a.m. and get up and go down to the family PC and start playing Sims 2. And all these years later, I think obviously we've both drifted in and out of playing it, but now at our ripe old age, we both still love playing it occasionally. But he is much more into, the story side of things, actually telling stories. So he always commissions me to build a lot, and then he then builds The Sims and plays it, and occasionally then he'll send me a video or an update, and it's so funny to just see some random house I've built being used in his family legacy or whatever it is. So yeah, if I could do more of that could be great. So I'll definitely figure out a good way to get these uploaded. Just working now on the gardens. I think we're pretty much nearly there. I did do some work in those side yard bits, the communal areas, but I don't think I showed that, but I think you can still see it at the end. But yeah, final tweaks, as I said before, just giving each of the gardens a little bit of personality and different vibes. Some are more taken care of, some are more overgrown. Other ones have like barbecues. So I think that one there has a little garden, like growing patch for growing vegetables. And yeah, and this one has an abandoned sofa. So a real range. Here we are then in the final cinematics. I will leave you to watch these, but just want to say again, thank you so much for watching. Please do go and watch my other videos if you like this. I've got more UK builds, so definitely go give them a watch, and thank you again for watching. I will see you in the next one.